All right, guys, and welcome back to another special edition of Taking Chances. As any of my guests that have followed me over the last 2 years, you know how big I am on the power of networking. So today I've got a really special guest that's going to be prominent on the power of networking. I've got Matvey Sukhanov coming in live. Actually, Matvey, I don't even know where you are today. We'll dive in, but where are you doing this filming from today?
Right now I'm in Vienna. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. Right now I'm in Vienna. I grew up in Bavaria, so in Germany, in Augsburg near Munich. And then we moved a year ago from from Augsburg to Vienna. And now we will probably move to the border of Switzerland to expand our reach a bit.
You are a man like me, so I know on any given week, as I've been doing some projects with you over the last 6 or 7 months, I've got to keep tabs on you to figure out where you're at, what time zone. But really just kind of hopping in before we go into your origination story for all of my guests, like super proud to have Matvey on. Number one, I love the skills that this guy's got, especially at the age. I mean, anytime Matvey, where I meet someone of your age with this kind of passion, it really kind of resets the deck for me on which trajectory humanity's going, right? I mean, you and I have got to know each other a little bit, but I'm just really excited to get your story out today. Before we hop into the story, though, to give my guests a little context, Matvey and I got linked up through a networking endeavor that I actually wasn't involved in. But you guys know how much I speak about the power of networking. So if you've watched my last 7 episodes, from any of my directors to my 2 business partners, Matvey was the brainchild behind the marketing that got all those guys to my desk. So Matvey, I just kind of want to jump in right at it, man. And I'm going to speak for you. I think you're one of the most insane marketing gurus I have met. Now, remember, my background in B2B, working with enterprise clients in the United States, massive marketing firms. A lot of people oversell and underproduce. So this will give context, giving it over to Matvey. This young gentleman is taking a handful of YouTube channels and Instagram profiles from 0 to 4 million followers. But Matvey, before we get into that, man, I know you've traveled. Tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what makes Matvey tick, maybe before you got into marketing.
So first of all, again, I'm from Germany, and I was always interested in films. And films is also about a little bit of marketing and psychology. So you need to convince a person to stay for like 2-3 hours in the seat and just listen without him going away. Nowadays, it's a little bit harder because you have Instagram, you have Shorts.
No, I like that though, Matvey. I like where you're going with this. So even how you started with this, rather than kind of going into marketing, let's unpack this a little bit. So you were really curious in films, and this makes a lot more sense. And I just love these questions right out of the gate, Matvey, because I can kind of see that and notions of what you touch in all your marketing. But I think I understand, but let's unpack that a little bit. So you've been good at telling longer narratives, or you were really immersed in that. And I've seen you deploy that, but I'm with you too. That is not the way that YouTube Shorts and everything's going right now. So, I mean, but you're kind of entering this marketing space. I don't want to speak for you, but just to restate what you said, I think you really like to hear stories and maybe tell stories. Is that a good way for us to start off?
Yes, exactly. I like longer stories because I don't think you can tell anything valuable within like 10 seconds. The attention span is just too low nowadays for the people. And that's why also I'm here at this podcast, because I think podcasts are a good way to kind of compromise for this. This is just a good thing to go forward.
Kind of good transition over that. Let me ask you this. So when you're looking at films, if I may ask, I'm just curious, what kind of films were piquing your interest when you were a kid? Is there certain films that like stick out to like the front of your head of like, oh man, this director or producer did it right? Or just did you have a wide breadth of interest there?
Oh yeah, so I watched like Die Hard, for example, with my dad.
Okay, I like this. Here we go, American. All right, here we go. Yep.
He loved those kind of films. My mother disliked them. Also Quentin Tarantino. My mother told he was a sick man, but my dad loved it.
She's probably right, and your dad was right too. I just want to hop in on that. I think both your parents were probably right on that observation.
Yeah, and then when I was 16, I watched Fight Club, and this is, I think, the film that everything changed, because it was super, super deep. At the same time, the cinematography was amazing. Like, I love David Fincher. I think he's the best director there is. And he's also so much into psychology and into, like, first of all, into the sick minds of people, what people are really thinking and don't want to express. So this is such an interesting topic. for
Well,
me.
well, all the movies, yeah, all the movies that you just listed off too, I would say, I mean, so everybody watching should have heard of these before, if not having a cult following. Let's just kind of unpack what you listed. So, and this will tell you a little bit about me. I would consider Die Hard a Christmas movie. Now, that might be
Yes,
a weird thing to say, right? Okay, but I think a lot of people say this,
it
right? So
is.
I agree. You know, my family and I, you know, every Christmas we still watch Die Hard. You know, love Bruce Willis. It's that story of action, American grit. You know, still kind of getting a little bit of the Christian values out at some aspect. But then I think you mentioned some very esoteric movies too, such as like Fight Club, where I think the visualizations and the cinematography almost in itself told a bit of the story. I mean, would you kind of look at it that way, where it really was very psychological of a way of displaying all the emotions, both from the visuals that you would see in those movies, but also kind of the underlying narrative that was presented?
Yeah, exactly. I think David Fincher, especially, is a master of like building slow tension and not just talking too much. He shows the story with the camera, with the eyes, instead of always with the dialogue. So I think this is a great way. And also, when you look at those old films, like Russian films, Tarkovsky, Stalker. I
Yep.
don't know if you've seen this film. This is just a masterpiece. This is one of the best films I've seen, and they don't even talk so much.
Now, were there certain aspects of each of those movies, Matvey, that you were kind of maybe even before you were in marketing? Like, did you realize what you were resonating with? Was it something like about each of those, if you had to throw them all up on a table, like, was there something cohesive about all those type of films that kind of pulled you in? That was like, just man, I like this. It's got my interest peaked.
I think they're films you need to watch 3-4 times until you fully understand them. And when you've watched them the first time, you you kind of think, okay, this is a great film, but I didn't fully understand the story. And there's so much deepness into this, depth into this,
Yep.
and so much more behind the first look. For example, Old Boy, if you've seen this film. Yeah, crazy great film.
You and I are going to have some great films to watch when I get over to Europe, I think, too. And it might be some conversations after that. I'm curious to ask you this because I mean, I know, and we're going to show all of our guests a lot of the content, but I'm curious. I'm curious to ask this question. And we're going to kind of jump a little bit forward now. We'll still stay on the origination, but I know now just hearing this from you, how challenging it's got to be to deploying conversations and stories and narratives today, where obviously you've already articulated this before we're even 5 minutes in, right? People's attention span are not where it was back when all those movies were created. You know, and I'm just curious, like, how are you deploying some of your marketing endeavors in that mentality? So I don't know if this is a good spot for us to hop in on Grimm, but I would say a lot of what you did for Grimm, I can kind of see touches and pieces of those movies there, and even those shorts that you displayed. And I wouldn't have thought of this before seeing all the videos, you know, previously to this conversation. But I mean, how do you kind of enter that?
I remember when we started the project. We started it with a Netflix director. He directed many films in Germany for Netflix, and also ZDF. I think
Okay.
the show was called 4 Blocks. It's about the mafia in Berlin. So he's also big into films. He's a great guy. Great director, great script writer. So he kind of helped me to develop this style. It wasn't like I had my own vision, of course, but we worked together on this. And I kind of put up a few of my nuances into those editings, of course.
And for Grimm, I guess just to keep going through the origination, was that your first kind of stab at doing marketing for B2B?
It was
I'm going to give context before you go because I know
yeah,
you're not going to celebrate. So the first marketing endeavor that you did, and I get it, you had a Netflix director that was probably a great coach to be around you because here you are as a young man loving films, interested in marketing. First endeavor you get involved with, you've got a Netflix director that's above you. And then you guys took a concept from the mind from 0 followers to 4 million across all channels. And how long did it take you guys to do that, Matvey? Was that over the course of a couple of years?
it took I think 2 years until we had the first million on YouTube. and also around about 2 years until we had the first million on Instagram. And at that time, we had like 500,000 on TikTok and 200,000 on Facebook, I think.
Okay, so as you're getting involved with this gentleman, and obviously you're starting to prove yourself to yourself, I would assume. At what point in time did you start stepping out and doing some work with Sebastian, and kind of doing the other marketing projects? So I, one of the things I love to give for Matvey folks is like just imagine a guest that's listening to this right now, maybe a young man or a young gal your age that's listening to this. Like, how the heck did these guys go out and do that? And you and I both know from doing these endeavors that we just take chances on ourselves, and we have an idea and we go after it. But I think what's really helpful is not a lot of humans think this way, and I feel that there's a lot of people that watch these kind of shows that are sitting on the sidelines and they're just about to get in the game of their life, and they're like, but they've got all these reasons why they can't do it. And they start justifying to themselves why they can't go. So I'm just really curious because I think this is a part of your story that pulled me to you. Like, how is Matvey so successful at the age that, but I'm just curious for you to kind of tell this story from your perspective and not as much about the endeavor with Grimm,
Yeah,
but
of
how are
course.
you gaining skill sets in your own skills as you were doing this? And like, what was your internal monologue as you're like going from, I love films, I'm trying marketing to, oh man, I think I'm really good at doing this. And I think I need to do this a little bit broader. I'm just curious to unpack your mindset during that.
Yeah. Yeah. When you think about films, you think about just cinematography and script writing and directing, but it's not. It's basically all skills combined all together. And even before Grimm, I made my short films that were nominated for awards, and I had to promote them, of course. I was also, we made a short film, and my job was it to be a producer for that film. So I had to kind of call the actors, convince them to be a part of this project. So this is everything, like it has to do with marketing, it has to do with sales a little bit. And then of course again I was on the stage for the short film premiere. I will send you pictures after that.
Yeah, we'll get them all listed on here too. What was the name of the film, if you don't mind sharing that right now? I'd love for
It's
people to be
it's
able to
it's
go back
just
and
a
find
it's
this.
just a short film. It's not popular or something, but it's called Goodbye Moon Man.
Okay.
And at that time I wanted to be a director, so it was a promotional film for a film school for is to become, I think it was in Munich or
Okay.
Vienna, I'm not sure about, or Berlin, one of those three cities. And they had a task to do anything with the moon. So I thought about, okay, what can I do? And it was basically about a man being trapped in a hamster wheel and finding his roots back when he was a small boy and still had dreams. And
I
then
love
was
this.
nominated. And uh, again, I was on the stage my first time. It was scary, but at the same time, it was great. And I had to promote and explain the film a bit because I knew that there were sponsors in the first row. So
So this got you a big first kind of run at multiverse business, I'd say, right? So you're interested in films, thinking you want to be a director, wearing many hats as a young man in that role. So you've got a short film that you've directed and are both acting in. Sponsors for the said film are in the first row while you're on
I
stage,
actually
probably for
wasn't
the.
acting. I actually wasn't acting in that film, but I was acting for Grimm in a few.
Gotcha. I
So
got you. But so at a young age, getting your feet wet, for lack of a better term, you just ended up wearing a bunch of hats to kind of see what was going to fit the right way and kind of get versed into those. Talk to me about after that endeavor. So obviously you got to touch a little bit of marketing. I'm assuming you're entering a lot of your marketing endeavors now with even new clients thinking about the story. Is that a good way for me to look at this now that kind of hearing this background? Like, I want to transition to Nick a little bit. And I know we're going to talk
mhm.
about all the endeavors you're on, but I think like you took Nick's story from my perspective as a consumer, right? Obviously I know Nick Lawless, but you took Nick from 0 followers on Instagram to about 100,000 followers or even more, like as I'm looking today, in about 3 to 6 months. So when you start with someone like Nick, are you taking that same director kind of approach of like, what is Nick's story that I'm trying to tell, or how do you kind of look at a new endeavor like that?
So that's a good question. For Nick, it was like he didn't have 0 subscribers because he was already an interesting person. He had so many tattoos, and he was like a great character. He has a deep voice,
He
and
does.
just great in front of the camera. and also his background story with the White House and the security and all his leadership skills. And now again, he published a book, so he's a great character. I think first of all you need to see, what we did also with Grimm, to see who we want to put in front of the camera, who should promote our company or our brand or our mission, so to say, right? And then if he's not interesting enough, and you don't have anyone that can replace him, just make him interesting, right? You can fake it a little bit. For example, with Grimm, we had the same thing. Of course, it's not his actual voice, but he had to make it deeper, for example.
Display it a little bit. But I love learning how you think. So even when you just said this, Matt Vegas, I don't know if you realize it, like, I need a great character. And if I've got a good character, I can start to kind of mold the story around him. And if I don't have the best character with your vision, I think you knew exactly what that character was for Grimm, and the actor had to just get a little bit of a deeper voice. But I do think one of the things I think you'll find in having conversations like this, because I think you and I are going to have a bunch of podcasts and webinars as we get into what we're doing together. I think it's really interesting to start to reverse engineer the mindset, right? Like, have you ever watched Steve Jobs' commencement speech of Stanford from 2013?
I think I have, yeah.
I'll send it to you after this. And this is a conversation that my guests have heard me say quite a bit before. It's always easier to connect the dots backwards after your life has kind of presented its own narrative of where you are. At times, it's hard to connect the dots moving forward, So just one of the things that I'm hearing from you, and then, loving your marketing endeavors, loving all the content you've put out for Nick or Grimm or yourself at Nevermind. It really showcases to me, Matvey, because I know you, that you approach this with a better foundation of telling an actual story, not just getting clicks or likes, because, a lot of marketing and PR companies, at least in the States, Matvey, they're not, we're not always looking at the right things, right? So I guess when we get into marketing in the United States, just to talk about this, you've got to justify your expense. And if you're not connected as a marketing agency to your client's A to B vision, maybe it is likes, maybe it is subscribers, maybe it's about getting their story out there so they have more trustful leadership content and people connect with them and resonate. And I think that's where brands that are really authentic just resonate with people like you. It's like, I got to get this story out. I know we could go in one direction, but I want it to be authentic to the mission. And I just think the way that you approach this, Matvey, is after spending myself hundreds of thousands of dollars with different marketing and PR companies, you really approach this in a different way. And I think it showcases in your level of detail that you put out. Let's talk a little bit now. Let's talk a little bit about what you're building right now, Matvey. I know as we're taking our guests through this, we've talked about your background, talked about that you've got a really good passion about telling stories and narrations for when it comes to marketing. But talk to me a little bit about what endeavors you're involved with right now, both with Sebastian, some of the stuff that you and I are talking about firing up.
Yeah, so right now with Sebastian, you had him on your podcast as well.
Yep.
Great guy. I met him also on Ring of Grimm. It was part of the Grimm, by the way. I don't know if you know that. This is where I met also Nick.
Yeah, if you want to explain it for a little bit, I don't think I've ever spoken about that, but that could be a good context just for some networking.
I have my ring. So we have a private members club, or we established a private members club within Grimm. So Grimm is again a YouTube channel where we have a Russian mafia boss, and he's talking about good stuff or good qualities of a person and how to behave better. And first of all, this is an interesting contrast. This is where we also hook to people. And
so you had that kind of dichotomy of like mafia boss explaining how to live better for all of humanity, right? So you had that little bit of duality going on. That's
exactly.
That probably pulled
this is a big contrast, yeah. And I know that the director that where I worked with him on the one from Netflix, right? He had his channel already like since 2014, and he made this video with Andrei, right? This is the guy in front of the camera. But the video didn't blow up until the Ukraine war, 2021 or 2022. And that's interesting because people started to kind of look up Russian guys and the Ukraine thing, and they saw this super aggressive looking Russian mafia boss, and you always hear like Russians are the bad ones and so on. And they saw this guy and saw he's giving actually good advice. So this
Yeah,
was a
great
big
life.
contrast. This was
It
an
was a big
interesting thing.
contrast.
Yeah.
Did you find did you guys kind of hone in on that once the Ukraine crisis kicked out? Is that something you guys started to repurpose a little bit, or was that just when the audience was more primed to kind of receive the message, so to speak?
Yeah, they were primed to receive the message, of course. We didn't even mention the Ukraine war, and the Ukraine war is kind of our theory why it blew up, the channel blew up, or at least the first video, right? And then we saw, okay, maybe we can do more videos with him and see where it goes. And then we made them and they went all viral, as well as the shorts, like the long ones and the short ones on Instagram and TikTok. Yeah.
So this is probably when Nick and Sebastian were getting involved with the ring, and then probably when you guys first networking endeavor together. Just to kind of transition back over to that too. So now Nick and Sebastian, Robert Jameson, all inside the Grimm, all people that I've networked with and started a business with Sebastian and Robert, now myself. Kind of talk to us about how that evolved into what you're doing today. I definitely want to talk about Nevermind Media. Definitely want to talk about what you and what you guys are doing with podcast studios in America, what we're doing with content, what you're doing. But kind of talk to us just a little bit about that transition. So now you got a bunch of the Grimm starting to grow. You've got a bunch of like-minded folks that are around you in the ring of power. I don't want to say that wrong. Or the ring of Grimm. I'm probably going back to Sauron. I love movies myself, Matvey, right? But talk to us a little bit about how you first met Sebastian and Nick, and like how did that foundation first come together? And then I'm assuming they influenced you a little bit to start doing some of these other endeavors. But just giving over to you for your perspective.
Yeah. So as a part of Grimm, because I will pull back a little bit on this. As a part of Grimm, we had to make, of course, an income. We couldn't produce all the videos for free. And we had to split up the YouTube income because we had to pay also the professionals that were behind the camera as well as in front of the camera. So we had to come up with a product, so to say. And we didn't want to make a regular product. So we came up with the private members club, which is called Ring of Grimm. Right. And then Sebastian was one of the earlier members, right? I've met him the first time in Switzerland. It was, I think it was 2024 in September, August, right? And I actually didn't talk about with him so much, but he got involved more into the administrative
administration side of all
administration side of Grimm. He developed the site, also was in development of the site for the members, and then we worked together a lot, and so we became good friends.
So similar to how we did too. I mean, I was on a couple cohabitation projects with Sebastian and then more with Mr. Jameson. And that's kind of where Nick was telling us all to get together. But it sounded like, very similar to how networking goes. You're in an endeavor as a young man, had some great tutelage around you. Process starts to grow like any other B2B concept, right? It's like, hey, we've got this lifestyle community that's growing up. We've got to think about a way to monetize this and get some revenue coming back in. And then it sounds like just through adjacency, you and Sebastian started to work on a couple projects together. At what point in time did that relationship grow a little bit to where you're like, hey, I think we can probably do some things ourselves together? Like, was it a couple months after you guys met? Because we're only going back, we're going back less than 2.5 years now that you guys have been closer colleagues. I'm just curious about how that spark first ignited for you.
It wasn't too long. It wasn't 2.5 years. It was, I think we spoke like a little bit deeper where we had a good conversation. It was like 1.5 years or 1 year ago.
Okay.
And then we connected straight away. And then I had the chance also to meet him in Stuttgart in person, and such a nice guy. We had so many similarities, and also we we loved Nick, of course. So it was like three musketeers, three of us, and then he introduced us to you.
That's great. Talk to me as you're doing all this. It's really curious to hear this. Talk to me a little bit about, and if we need to edit this out too, feel free. I'm going to say this
Okay.
to myself, I
Yeah.
guess. Talk to me a little bit about Nevermind. Nevermind's your main endeavor. Is that correct? I don't want to say this the wrong way. Is that the
Yeah,
main marketing company you guys are focusing on? So,
it
so
is.
talk to me about. I guess what I want to pull out a little bit is how you started Nevermind, because that's a really big story on this too. Like, you working with Sebastian, when it went from that friendship, him being great, to how you started Nevermind. From that, what we're going to go into heavy is like kind of this foundation story to how your marketing mindsets evolved after starting Nevermind. So talk to me about your brand for a little bit, Matvey. Talk to me about how Nevermind became your brainchild and what you're looking to do with it.
So I started it out alone without Sebastian, and Sebastian
Okay.
came like a few months after that. And because I needed a partner who knows more about, for example, LinkedIn, and would fill the gap. Especially LinkedIn is a good platform for B2B companies and services. So I'm a professional in my Instagram and YouTube and TikTok realm, I would say, but I didn't have so much experience with LinkedIn. So this is where he came in. So what we do at Nevermind is we help companies to generate more leads and growth through authority, right? So
I love this.
this is not only for uh, to get more clicks. This is building a brand and sort of I would say, cult
No,
about
I think that's a
the.
good way to say it too, Matt. Yeah, you can. That's a very comfortable word to say in the States. People will resonate with that. You want to have a cult following if you're, whether you're a personal brand or a
Exactly.
B2B brand. So kind of keep going into that spiel for me. What kind of clients are you looking for at Nevermind, Matvey? Because I know leadership content. Let's be honest. This is what got you and I working together, and I'm smiling so much as you're talking
Mhm.
because, again, Sebastian and I are very similar. I'm more in operations, more in marketing. He's more in engineering and marketing at the same.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
having said that, I'm a guru at LinkedIn. I am not a guru on any of the other channels you listed. But talk to me more about, like, what is the right kind of client for Nevermind? I'm assuming B2B leaders. I'm
Yes.
assuming CEOs, but also maybe some solopreneurs as well. I mean, just give it to me from your mindset.
So for businesses, we focus on C-level positions, and what we do in for for their branding is we pick one or two interesting people from a company in the C-level positions, and we create personal branding for them on LinkedIn, and kind of tell the people what they're doing, not only for like marketing purposes, but only to promote their personal um,
Like
brand a
thoughtful
little bit more.
leadership content, right? So it
Yeah,
can be a breadth of what that executive brings to the table for their own business, what the business is bringing to the table. But it sounds like you're definitely looking for, like, if a CEO comes to you and it's like, hey, I'll use myself as an example. If I came to
yeah,
you, I'd like to think I'm kind of an interesting guy because I skydive and stuff like this. So oftentimes in these companies, I'm the one that was thrown in the front. But let's say if I'm, like a lot of CEOs, I don't want to be in the front of the business. I'm very good at what I do. I don't always like to talk about it. This is very common, Matvey. This is probably how Sebastian and I are in business so well. Everyone that I've helped in business is usually a killer at what they do. So I don't care if it's a plumber, an engineer, an HR director. They're usually really good at what they do. But when they start a business, they're not usually good at sales or marketing, just like, so it doesn't
yeah,
matter what they're doing.
exactly.
You've still got to tell that story. And this is why people like Matvey are so important to the world. And I mean this, Matvey, even when I first got on my Amazon endeavor, I can just tell my story. I'm so good at operations and I'm pretty good at brand building. But even when I first started my first business, I didn't think about advertisement cost, it's so funny to say today, but so many business owners and very powerful CEOs, when they're in a startup, are like, oh shit, man, I forgot about this thing called sales and marketing,
Yeah.
unless they're a sales and marketing kind of endeavor. So, keep going with me on that one. What are some of the clients that you guys are working with right now? I know you've got a couple C-level suites. Are you putting out just content on LinkedIn? Do you kind of have a vision to take some of those brands off LinkedIn into omni-channel if it resonates with their consumers? Or are you guys going to focus predominantly just on LinkedIn these days?
No, we want to do it with omnichannel. And again, I've talked about podcasts at the beginning, so this is where we are heading in this direction. we are doing podcasts for B2B companies and helping them to also to build their brand around podcasting. Because what podcasting does great is you attract more interesting people who want to buy from you instead of like those people who just watch the 10-second videos
Yep.
and doom scroll. That will appreciate and value your expertise, and you will have much more time to speak about your expertise in a podcast than you would do in a 10-second reel, right? So this is where, in the direction where we want to go.
And I'm curious just to ask this. Is this taken off? I'm not saying just for your endeavor, but I know leadership content in the States has been a hot topic for, I'd say, probably less than 5 years, maybe a little bit longer. Some brands knew about it. I didn't, for my guests that follow us too, I lived in Europe for 4 years, probably moving back over the next 3 years. I didn't see as much action as far as this goes. Like, I didn't just see this as kind of a thought process for a lot of executives that I talked to, at least, right? So I'd ask someone where their LinkedIn page was and, what they were posting, and it could have just been my perspective, Matvey. But I feel like it's a big gap that's just needed to be filled in Europe. Is that a good assumption by my premise? I mean, are a lot of brands doing this yet? Are you finding that you kind of entered this seeing like, man, some of the Americans are doing this and we're not really doing this in Europe? I'm just curious for your perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Where did you live in Romania, right?
Romania, Croatia, Italy, Switzerland, residency in Romania. Yeah, but I mean, I'd say I bounced all over Europe, but I didn't really.
You're right. Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, man.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in Europe, I miss America for the GDP. When I'm in America, I miss Europeans for the friends and like just the great community that I have. But I find now that I'm kind of like intercontinental and I'm not happy anywhere I'm at. I've kind of done this to myself, but I just didn't see a lot of it, Matt. So it sounds like you're kind of backing up what I'm saying. It's not, brands don't know about it yet. And it's probably a wide open market for you guys just to get some good, thoughtful content out for folks.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is like such a cheat sheet, I would say. You just look at the American market and see what makes them successful and all the entrepreneurs, what they're doing, and then just copy it, or not copy it, but implement it into the European market, because we are like 2-3 years behind, and they will be shocked by the results.
Well, it works, Matvey. And I mean, obviously you and I've talked about this behind the scenes. And I mean, this is something where, whether this is right to say on the podcast or not, I don't really focus on monetizing the podcast at all. I've easily signed over $3 million in revenue from doing 24 episodes, which is just a crazy thing to say as a business owner, right? And for people that are out there in Europe, first of all, sorry that I talk so fast in English. Wait till you guys meet me in person. But I can really give a good testimony to not only what Matvey's doing as a person, but just to this overall strategy. Because Matvey, this is what's brought you and I together. Taking Chances is a podcast that's near and dear to me because I coach about 250 to 300 entrepreneurs. This is just something that allows kind of my lunacy to come out. I love working in startups. I love talking to brands. I love being able to break some things and fix it quick. But then on the other side of me, I've got this big B2B enterprise where, I've got Shift Happens, where we really talk about how we're applying workflow solutions to B2B enterprises. And Matvey, I'll be honest, I doubt you'd ever want to listen to that. But for the folks that need it, it's super relevant. But at scale, what we have now is I've got kind of a content machine where it's not about content for me. I can talk about real case studies that are happening in both Ascendium and Human Capital Resource in real time with my clients. And what I find is my discovery calls are a lot easier, right? So if someone has a question about how I think about, large footprint restaurants, go watch my podcast. I'm not going to bullshit you on a discovery call. Like the things that I think you might not agree with, but I put enough out there. So if you don't agree with me, go to somebody else for business. I think this is one thing that I've learned from marketing too, Matvey. Yeah. I think a lot of Americans that do this wrong are trying to win everybody over. And what I've learned, probably even from working with you a little bit, is if you're being honest enough, you're probably going to piss a couple people off. And I don't mean like we're intentionally trying to pee them off, but in these days, to go back to what you and I started on, with people's attention span being so short, I love to put out long form content that we can turn that long form content with a really good story, like you were talking about,
Yes,
Matvey, right?
yes.
Of like, now I've got a really good story. I'm not trying to just film a clip. I want to take some of those clips from like episodes like this where I can really drive some relevancy. Um, I know you and I are kind of approaching an endeavor together. I don't know if it's something that we talk about in depth, but let's just talk this way for a moment. I I know that the power of networking has brought us together. From believing in networking, we were aligned enough to see, 5 to 6 humans around us that were also like-minded, right? Kind of going after the same things. Um, where do you see this going next for you, Matvey? And less with our endeavor, but just for this content strategy. I can't wait to kind of get you out to the market more because I really think you're going to become a national name. And I mean that, Matvey. I think the way that you deploy marketing, the way that you tell a story, if you can stick with that to all your clients and never lose that foundation, right? And it might mean something like not every client's going to be a good fit for you because they got to be interesting to really tell that story. But where do you see this going from your perspective? You've articulated Europe's not doing this a ton. You've got some great American colleagues that you're working with that are really impressed with what you're doing. How do you kind of see this unfolding over the next 2 to 3 years? And what would you like to see? Like, what kind of guests do you want to see coming to you for some help?
So where do you see my company or the
Yeah, your
direction that
company and
the
this
company?
this marketing endeavor. I mean, how do you see this? And I don't want to say in your wildest dreams, but let's just say everything connects. Like, how do you see this unfolding for you over the next 6 to 12 months?
Honestly, it's hard to say because, of course, with AI, it gets so much more complicated, and you cannot like there's maybe technology already out there or podcasts that are without being made without real humans, right? So I cannot compete with this, or they're doing perfect marketing strategies within like 5 seconds while I'm thinking about it like for days. Um,
But I don't want to challenge you, Matvey, but I think this
yeah,
is where you actually provide more value. So I'll just say this. I own an AI company. Sebastian and I are deep in it. I don't see it replacing humans on this aspect. I think it's going to 10x our reach, but I think the way that you tell a story is going to be so different than I think we could train an AI to think like you, Matvey, and I think your thought process could eventually become a prompt. But I think if the average person is going to an AI podcast company and they're saying, hey, I'm just going to do all this AI, I'll just say this out loud, owning an AI company, God fucking bless you and good luck. Because I think like that level of detail and how you tell a story, like I see this in Nick's content. I see this in Grimm's content. I had no idea about you loving movies, but now seeing all that content and stepping back from it, I'm like, dude, don't lose that, Mavic. I think with what we're doing with AI, you're going to 10x your output. But I think without someone like you, Matvey, and this is just from my perspective, I don't think any language model would be able to, like, we'll talk about some of the stuff we're doing. Speech pattern recognition, taking a customer like this, a client like Matvey into a podcast to get a speech pattern recognition. You're still going to be a filter that speech pattern recognition, that content I want to run through Matvey way before I want it to run through our trained language models. I'll just tell you this as a consumer, but where do you see this kind of going with you putting your thumb on the pulse of content for some folks?
so I would like to go away a little bit more from this online thing, and I would love people to come to my place,
I
maybe
love this.
from Switzerland or Germany, because I would live in the middle of the Dachraum. It's between Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Italy, Austria, and Germany, and it's very well connected to, for example, Zurich.
It's the
Um,
best place to live. You see this turning into a in-person podcast studio where you can get
yes,
people coming to you. You still want to tell real stories and make
yes.
sure that we're impacting those people. Matvey, I love this conversation, man, and I absolutely love getting to know you a little bit more. I'm going to post all your socials down below. If you can for us, though, just let us know what's your website, your LinkedIn, all that good stuff. We'll get them linked. But, just leave the guests with a little bit as we're kind of gassing out on time. What are some folks that you would be ready to help tomorrow? And then just leave them with a little bit, a couple ways to find you.
You can also check out the Grimm channel. You can check out the Nick Lawless channel. And I will actually send you my earlier works from 2021, I think.
I'd love to get those posted too.
The short
Yeah,
film.
I'd love to see those short stories. Yeah, get them for me at least, if nothing else, Matvey. Well, I'll tell you what. We are about, as this episode is going to release probably in 6 to 7 days. We're only 21 days from our first AI kind of behind the scenes YouTube channel going. Matvey, I would not be shocked if I'm not inviting you to that. I love the conversation we got to have today, Matvey, and I don't want to speak for you, but everyone that I'm working with is in this endeavor, I'm starting to realize too, we haven't lost a human component, meaning we are deep in AI. But I think, from Nick, yourself, Bob, Sebastian, the engineers that we've hired, we know where the world's going, but we don't want to forget where the world's came from. And I think that's really what we're doing at scale, Matvey. I'll have all Matvey's socials listed, but for anyone that's out there looking for a marketing endeavor in B2B space, and I'm talking to my clients right now, specifically the hospitality brands, and I just mean this, Matvey, we can't lose the human component. There is no better company that I would send you guys to than Matvey. But I think as long as you keep holding on to that person-first perspective, telling these narratives, and then looking for good characters. I'm hoping Matvey is going to be behind me telling this crazy character story one day because we can use some help on TikTok as well. So, all right. Well, thanks for being here. Yeah, well, you might run away from me once you get to know more about me too, Matvey, but I appreciate you being here today, brother. Thanks for everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.